Welcome to the beat. I'm Ari Melber, and we start tonight with the immigration clash that continues after Donald Trump's loss at the Supreme Court. Now, the judge in that case is pushing the administration to carry out what is basically the Supreme Court's order to return this man who was mistakenly sent to El Salvador. A point that, as I've told you before, if you've followed the story, is not in dispute. The administration admits this mistake was made. They admit this was an error, but they haven't yet done anything that we know of publicly to rectify it and have claimed the opposite, that they can't fix it. Now, Donald Trump is basically using this case, which does boil down to one person, to test whether he can defy the high court. Can he drive through the loophole that Chief Justice Roberts left in the way he wrote this order? And will there be consequences? Because the Supreme Court has basically upheld the lower court loss. There are some details there I've mentioned. We'll return to them tonight. But in essence, everyone understands that who's looked at this. The lower court judge ruled against the Trump administration and said that the administration must facilitate this detainee's return from the erroneous location they sent him. Now, there's a new hearing today. That same judge had strong words for Trump's DOJ attorney, saying there'll be no tolerance for gamesmanship or grandstanding here. And so we are in this moment that if you follow these type of things, you say, okay, you remember how it used to be. Even administrations that took large views of presidential power, like Reagan or Bush, would regularly comply with these orders. Indeed, that was an era where we didn't live with the kind of questions we have today. The question today is, what next? If the administration is testing how far it can defy or flout the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, with several judges appointed by Trump on that, several Supreme Court justices from Trump's term, as well as others, if they can define that, well, what's going to happen day to day at the lower court level? Well, tonight we have some answers on that. And while they might not be all that encouraging for an overnight solution to this problem, it does show you how this is all going to play out. And some of this is, as you've probably heard, uncharted territory. How do you deal with an administration that tests everything and often does so in what many lawyers allege, and sometimes evidence shows, is dishonest or bad faith? Well, first, the news tonight is this judge is now fast-tracking a probe into whether the DOJ lied and defied in the lead-up to this standoff. Now, you can come to your own conclusions about that. We've covered when the planes took off. You've heard Donald Trump himself and Stephen Miller and others talk openly about what sounds like defying the court. But that is different from how a legal process investigates and then ultimately makes conclusions about something. So whatever one thinks, whether it's likely or not that they were dishonest, now there will be what they call expedited discovery, a fast track of depositions of government officials and others to get to the bottom of this. The judge telling those involved to cancel any vacations and be ready to do this fast. Now, what if people who work for Trump follow his lead and basically try to defy those requests? We've seen this before, especially in the first term. There were people who thought they could get away with what Trump could get away with, and they forgot they weren't president or former president. They weren't as powerful, and they got in a lot of trouble. Some of them went to prison, you may recall. So some of the system does still hold, or is supposed to, and there are sanctions available even against current government officials. Could be monetary, could be disciplinary, like their professional status or whether lawyers are allowed to argue in court or keep their bar licenses. It could also potentially eventually lead to jail time, depending on the type of contempt that a judge uses. And this judge is citing exactly those examples today, not saying we're there yet, but weighing possible contempt proceedings against the Trump administration. The judge wants frequent updates on the progress here, and some of those have been lacking. The DOJ continues to echo basically Trump's dodge, putting all this on El Salvador, saying they're only prepared to facilitate Garcia's presence in the U.S. if he shows up, if he presents at a port of entry. This would be, I guess, the hypothetical prison break scenario where Garcia gets out of El Salvadorian's prison and then makes it to a port of the U.S., which is a country where he's having trouble staying. Very unlikely that would happen, even if he somehow got out of the prison. In that case, though, the U.S. would then, the Trump officials say, have him removed to a third country or seek to end what is his current protected status, meaning he's protected from being sent to El Salvador. That was the whole legal issue. They're saying in that case, they would just send him back down there. Now, if that sounds like a bit of legal mumbo jumbo, let's not forget there is a person involved in all this who has a family and a heck of a lot more people and families who will be affected depending on whether they get away with this. With that in mind, again, I've tried to show you the evidence and the facts. I'm showing you what the Trump side says, but Let's remember this person and his family. We also want to show you, as part of our reporting, what his wife said today.
I find myself pleading with the Trump administration and the Bukele administration to stop playing political games with the life of Kilmer. We will continue standing strong, and we will never give up on you, Kilmer.
That is her view and her plea in what is obviously a difficult situation where, by all accounts, as much we can tell, you have an individual person in the wrong prison, their family suffering and wondering what will happen, and two powerful countries, as she put it, playing games about this person's life. Now, we don't have any evidence that the United States has even requested, say in a phone call or an email, that El Salvador just release Garcia. Wouldn't even have to be at the presidential level of that meeting yesterday, but there's no evidence, as you see here in the filing, that anyone's requested his release. The playbook was blunt at the White House yesterday. El Salvador's president followed Trump's lead, basically playing this game of the catch-22, and we have no power, and we haven't really talked about it, and we can't do it, claiming he couldn't release this individual back to the U.S., who he just got from the U.S. The Attorney General under Trump says they're not going to do it.
What they also said is just facilitate, meaning if he wanted a plane flight, we could give him a plane flight, but we cannot effectuate it, meaning making it happen. President Bukele does not want to give him back to the United States, nor do we want him back.
Right, so that's it. Now, in fairness to the Attorney General, she is lawyering. She's the top lawyer in the Justice Department, right? She's taking that word that we've now heard so much about since this story broke, facilitate, and giving it her reading, which is the minimum least possible, right? That's their position. And so while it might be a stretch, I showed you the evidence that some people allege there's been bad faith. That itself is under investigation. We are now at the point where this is up to the Supreme Court. If facilitate means do it or try to do it, or at least go on record requesting it, well, these are all lawyers. I know some lawyers. I'm a lawyer. You can just deal with that and say, if there were any doubt on the next appeal, because his lawyers can say they have not facilitated it, and that can become another issue on appeal. If he's stuck in the prison, you say facilitate meant try, and at least show on record that you requested and you did not. You are now in breach. You must comply. And we have legal protocols for the passage of individuals between countries, right? This is not a first-time thing. We have extradition for defendants or detainees, even if they might be dangerous or alleged to be so. If they wanted to do this, they could. Now, that case is about one person, as I mentioned, but the precedents will test broader powers in the second Trump era. And everybody knows that. If you follow the news and you're hearing my voice, watching it or hearing it somewhere, you must follow some news. You might recall cases that take many, many months, sometimes over a year, from when the conflict starts to when they reach the Supreme Court. You notice this one got right to the high court, and they unanimously ruled against Trump. Why is that? In this case, the answer is simple. Because everybody gets that these are big, important cases, not because one person will matter in some grand way for years for the national security of the United States, but because these are where the lines will be drawn. And we're seeing the administration try to push past the lines in other detainee cases. Take this Columbia student, Mohsen Madawi, detained by officials in an immigration office in Vermont. Now, his lawyer says he was there actually doing the right thing under law. We hear a lot about how immigrants are supposed to comply, that he showed up there voluntarily, according to the lawyer, and we have evidence of that in the sense that we can see him leaving there. And it was at a site where they were supposed to do a naturalization interview, the final step in pursuing citizenship. But instead, you see him held and walked out, I meant to say, arrested and handcuffed before being removed. The government is not commenting on this yet. We do know that he was part of public pro-Palestinian protests. That's the kind of free speech that every resident of the U.S. can partake in. Citizen or not, by the way, if you're here, you are afforded certain rights, and you have the right to free speech. And recall, it was Trump and his allies like Elon Musk who claimed they were campaigning to protect free speech, be it literally vis-a-vis the government or in a broader sense online. Remember hearing all about that? Well, whatever happens in this case, it's clear there's a lack of respect for free speech that opposes some of their positions. We've seen that in the crackdowns on campuses. We have more on that later tonight, just writ large. And there are valid wider concerns, by the way, about hate speech when it goes in either direction in discussions in the Middle East, which is such an intense conflict with multiple religions that's lasted a long time. And sometimes, by the way, the concerns about hate speech or anti-Semitism are selectively invoked by Trump in a wider crackdown on his perceived opponents, regardless of what's really happening. So he'll just say, oh, all the colleges are anti-Semitic, and that's why he's interfering. But then there's a much broader agenda there. But with all that said, I want to point out here in our reporting that Madawi had actually previously spoken out against anti-Semitism as unjust, also calling for what he called the, quote, freedom of Palestine. This was back in 2023 to 60 Minutes.
To be anti-Semitic is unjust. And the fight for the freedom of Palestine and the fight against anti-Semitism go hand in hand, because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Again, putting a face on it, that is the person that we are talking about. And there's been no clear public evidence that would link him to the kind of terrorism or foreign enemy activity at this hour that would justify removal. And so that leaves the burden more on the administration to explain why someone who showed up voluntarily for naturalization, who's at a campus, who's part of the fabric of the American immigration and tourist experience and student visa experience, why that person's being singled out. And if they have other evidence, let's hear it. But if they don't, we are seeing a pattern that I discussed with former Trump DHS Secretary Chad Wolf on this very show, asking him, would it be okay to do this? Would it be okay to crack down based on speech? And he said, no, it wouldn't, but he claims it's not happening. Well, we're going to keep following it because there's mounting evidence it may be happening. There's also reporting the Trump administration knew in advance that a Tufts student they detained, Rumaisi Ozturk, in this controversial video taken off the street by ICE agents, she's now in custody in Louisiana. But the Washington Post reports there were no ties to terrorism found, despite the administration claiming the opposite. And it was known, the Post report says, before her arrest, with the determination that, quote, the Trump administration had not produced any evidence showing she engaged in not only anti-Semitic activities, which is related to speech, or like I said, hate speech, or made a public statement supporting a terrorist organization, which could cross over into the kind of legal issues that actually do potentially support removal. The Atlantic says we are seeing, quote, this week, obvious contempt for the Supreme Court and the rule of law. DOJ veteran Andrew Weissman told us last night these immigration cases are showing that the constitutional crisis is here now, he said. Not a close call, not a looming threat, not a what if we get a ruling and they ignore it, but Weissman saying the crisis is here because they have the ruling and they are ignoring it. The only nuance, if you want to give it that, is what I mentioned last night and what we reported the night this case came down. It didn't land as a clear return the guy, right? It landed as facilitate the thing with due deference to the president's powers as commander-in-chief over immigration and foreign policy. So, yes, normal historical administrations comply with this kind of stuff, but you know who we're dealing with here. And so the next move, whether we have a crisis or not, I've shown you different people's views of whether we're at a 7 or a 9 or a 10 is, what will the Supreme Court do? Because what I can tell you with all fairness and evidence is this administration ain't facilitating anything as suggested in that ruling. Now we have Asha Rangappa, who has done exactly this kind of work in the field, legal expert, FBI special agent, when we're back in 90 seconds.
You gonna bring that guy back from El Salvador? Yeah. Hang on. Why not?
Well, because that's not power of Congress.
Supreme Court said to bring him back.
Judges are,
Yeah,
and the president has a
can they do?
constitution.
He's defined the
You're on the
Constitution.
duty
for
to
a
hold him
committee.
accountable.
Trump don't care.
Republican Senator Grassley there facing constituents at an Iowa town hall. That's brand new. We're joined by Asha Rangappa, former FBI special agent and Yale Global Affairs senior lecturer. Welcome. I walked through how we got here and other administrations would have complied by now, certainly could have put in writing a request to return the individual that they mistakenly put in a foreign prison. The administration's clearly not doing that. What do you see as the next step legally, and does the Supreme Court have to act or risk making it seem like this is okay?
Yeah, Ari, I think there are two things going on here. So first is the non-compliance with the lower court's order. She asked for three things. She asked for the status and location of Abrego Garcia. She asked for steps that the administration is taking and what additional steps they plan to take. And they've been non-responsive on that. So that gets to the contempt piece that she's trying to adjudicate. But I think you alluded to the bigger issue, which is the Supreme Court's original ruling left this ambiguity in terms of where does the line from facilitate to effectuate, where is that line drawn? And I think here the question is, how big of a fig leaf is this deference to foreign affairs going to be that the Trump administration can hide behind and that the Supreme Court is going to back them up on?
Yeah, we have plenty of background on this. I want to show just a few Trump officials talking about how they can get people back to the U.S., including much harder situations like hostages. Take a look.
The president is deeply involved in all of these conversations. He'll empower his team. He'll say, I want this person out. We come up with options. He approves them.
President Trump's team, at his request, engaged with Russia on Ksenia's case. Secretary Rubio, Special Envoy Witkoff, CIA Director Ratcliffe, National Security Advisor Waltz, and Special Envoy Bowler mobilized their teams to bring her home.
Does the Supreme Court care that when this administration or any works to bring someone back, it looks like that, not this sort of almost trolling or pretty much dismissive attitude we saw in the White House meeting yesterday?
All right, there's no question that he could do this. It's not a question of can. I think the question is, how much can the court compel him to do it? And if he doesn't, then where are we? I think the question for the court here is, how relevant does the judiciary as an institution want to be here? This came up in the post 9/11 context, where the Bush administration tried to basically put detainees out of the reach of the courts and strip courts of their jurisdiction. And the court said, oh, no, you didn't. They said, we have a right here. We get to say whether this person is an enemy combatant or not. So I think this is really about the court's survival as an institution to be able to actually have a say in the rule of law, in constitutional rights that are afforded to people here. And it would be an incredible travesty if detainees in Guantanamo Bay who were captured abroad in a military context and never set foot on American soil have more rights than people who've lived here for a decade and have been law-abiding citizens.
And even worse, we are seeing what they do with loopholes. So if they have if they have a foreign prison loophole for mistakes, obviously it could also be used on Americans, as Justice Sotomayor said in that same ruling Thursday, which we've quoted that point. You mentioned the Gitmo cases. I mean, yeah, those were cases where the president had, under precedent, more authority, because as you say, they weren't in the U.S. territory. They were mostly taken abroad. There was a new fangled war on terror and a debate about what that meant. Were they even out of uniform, fundamentally more like prisoners of war, where the court gives a wide latitude. And there was a whole series of cases, all the way up to Boumediene, that said, no, you have to be answerable. Any reason you can think of why this court now seems more shy or timid on these fundamental issues that are inside the U.S. border?
I think that this court seems to really want to lean into this whole idea of the unitary executive. And even in its immunity ruling last year, it talked about these core exclusive and preclusive Article 2 authorities. And so I worry that they are going to have a more expansive view of some of these deferential areas, which the Trump administration keeps invoking for precisely this reason: foreign affairs, terrorism, national emergency, invasion, all of these areas where courts traditionally give a great degree of deference and where executive authorities are greatly expanded. The one thing here, Ari, with the comparison with the Gitmo cases is the Bush administration really tried to avoid having a major constitutional confrontation that it was not going to win. They would move people into criminal proceedings so that they wouldn't have to face that. the Trump administration is really looking for this showdown. And to me, I think this is ultimately coming down to a loyalty test, as it does with Trump in every other context. Will the Supreme Court be loyal to him? And if they're not, then will he still be able to do what he wants anyway? And will the people in the executive branch follow what might end up being illegal orders?
Right. Exactly. And that's why some say the crisis is already afoot. Asha Rangappa, thank you very much. We have a lot coming up in the show. By the end of the hour, a friend of the show and a Curb veteran, Jeff Garland here, along with Democratic veteran Mayor of L.A., Antonio Villaraigosa. So that's a fun combo by the end of the hour. You know, we mix it up. Stay with us for that. But first, I mentioned earlier, we hadn't hit the story yet. Harvard actually is using their war chest to go at Trump in a way where many other places and institutions have folded. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, one of the top voices you could have on all of this, live next. The nation's most powerful and richest university faced a choice, as did many other universities, in dealing with what Donald Trump is trying to do, abusing power, what many call a shakedown of these institutions. And Harvard is stepping up, rejecting the Trump demands for all kinds of changes and basically political big government interference at the school, the opposite of any kind of conservative approach. And the administration is now retaliating, saying that it has the power to freeze over $2 billion in the federal funding that was already headed towards Harvard. But the president there says no government should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue. Barack Obama has all kinds of interests in this story, including disagreeing with Trump on many things. He's also a Harvard alum. And he says Harvard has set an example, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom. Let's hope other institutions follow suit. Trump has been explicit about how they want to abuse power to reshape colleges. As I mentioned earlier in the show, it is against free speech. It's against the exact type of independent inquiry and freedom of thought that colleges are supposed to have. And it's very anti-conservative because it's trying to abuse big government power and funding to shape local and individual and even private activities. A top Trump DOJ official said just this last month.
We're going to bankrupt these universities. We're going to take away every single federal dollar. That is why we are targeting these universities.
It's happening, and this is a big deal. Senator Sanders also speaking out, saying congratulations to Harvard for refusing to relinquish its constitutional rights to Trump's authoritarianism. Other universities should follow their lead. Instead of doing pro bono work for Trump, cowardly law firms should be defending those who believe in the rule of law. What we are seeing in this second term is that things that were fought tooth and nail in the first term and often led to those court clashes that narrowed, paused, or ended these abuses of power, here not only is some of it working, but we're not going to get all the same court clashes if everybody folds. People are bending the knee. Kind of brings back the untouchables. Take a look.
Nice to have a family.
Yes, it is.
Man should take care. See that nothing happens to him.
That was the fictionalized threat of gangsters against the government. Here, many argue, and you just saw Obama support the interpretation of this happening in the opposite direction. The government trying to shake down, extort, and threaten free and private institutions. The governor of Massachusetts is here on this story when we come back. We're joined by Massachusetts Democratic Governor Maura Healey. She's praised Harvard in the story we've been covering, saying that they're standing against the Trump administration's brazen attempt to bully schools and weaponize DOJ under the false pretext of civil rights. Thank you for joining me. What is important about what Harvard is doing?
Harvard's saying enough is enough. And let me be clear, Ari, I was a civil rights lawyer. I was attorney general. There is no place for anti-Semitism in society on our college campuses, or anywhere else. And there's no question that Jewish students have been treated poorly on campuses around this country. It's also the case that colleges need to do more. And in fact, Harvard has done more, and they've said that there is more work for them to do, and they're doing that. But that's not what is going on here, Ari. And I think this is the point that people need to really understand, that this is really just another attempt by Donald Trump to silence those who disagree with him, to bully, in this case, our colleges and universities in the same way he's bullied and tried to silence law firms and corporations and everyday people, in fact. And that is really, really bad. It's bad for who we are as a country. It's bad for the marketplace of ideas. It's bad, and it needs to be stopped. Today, for example, I was out visiting one of the great universities here, our medical school here at University of Massachusetts. And last week I was at a Harvard teaching hospital. And these are places, Ari, that rely on that federal funding for their scientists and their researchers. They're using that funding to cure cancer, to cure Alzheimer's, to come up with life-saving measures. And I think people need to understand the economic impact of all of this, and also what it means for everyday lives of Americans around this country and, frankly, around the world.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and there's so many layers to it, because first there's the anti-free speech crackdown, the abuse of government power. What I mentioned was very anti-conservative, sort of big government, in your classroom and in independent and private institutions. Second, people think a lot of things when they think Harvard, right? It might be a bit of a Rorschach test for some. But boy, are they behind a lot of life-saving research. They write in the statement, which I think you were partially alluding to, new frontiers beckon with life-changing advances based on their research, treatments for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, breakthroughs in AI. For the government, that's referring to the Trump administration, to retreat from these partnerships risks not only the health and well-being of millions, but economic security and vitality of our nation, from the Harvard-Garber statement there. And it's really true that the administration doesn't care, and I guess doesn't pretend to care about that fallout, because they want to make a point about going after what they see as political opponents.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what people need to understand, this is bigger than Harvard. I mean, Harvard is a wonderful institution, has contributed so many things when you think about advancements in health, advancements in science, all the support it provides on everything from cybersecurity to our defense industry, right? It's also the case that there are a lot of colleges and universities around the country who are doing this, who are also having their funding cut. This makes no sense. I am about America first. I want to put this country first. But I can tell you right now, Ari, because of what he's done to Harvard, because of what Trump is doing to other universities, China is recruiting all of our scientists and researchers away. He's giving away intellectual assets, okay? He's taking away the people who are doing the research right now and are on the brink of discoveries to cure cancer and to end disease, to do things that will change the world in positive ways as we know it. It just makes no sense to me. So not only is it an attack on our colleges and universities, it's also an attack on this country, on our economy, on who we are. We're a leader in innovation, and I want us to be just that. But whether you're talking about Harvard University, whether you're talking about the University of Alabama or University of Georgia, this stuff is happening in real time right now. I was on a campus today, Ari, where I learned that faculty members are being let go. They've had to rescind offers for students who are engaged in postdoc and scientific research and study programs because this funding is going away. And, it just kills me knowing the consequences of this. So, look, it's an abuse of power. It smacks of the authoritarian regimes of past when you talk about silencing law firms, companies, colleges, and universities, when you talk about disappearing people from our streets, including foreign students here on work visas. And it also has really significant economic consequences for this country. If you truly believe in America first and you want to bring and reshore manufacturing here, you know what you shouldn't be doing? Sending our researchers and our scientists and the next generation of entrepreneurs overseas, which is what Donald Trump is doing
by cutting funding to our colleges and universities.
You're speaking very clearly. Obviously, it's something you know a lot about, and you're the top official, chief executive, and top Democrat in the state of Massachusetts. So getting your view on this and what is honestly a sad intersection of politics and Harvard, because it's the government, the Trump administration, making it political. It didn't have to be this way, and now, but you know a lot about both. So I do appreciate you coming on the beat on this story tonight, Governor Healy. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. We're going to fit in a break. I've told you there's a lot going on. We've dealt with immigration. We just dealt with the Harvard crackdown. But there are also other important things and notes of hope, purpose, and culture, which we're going to get to by the end of the hour. So stay with me. Got a lot more coming up. I told you we want to mix it up, and we have a little politics and a little culture in a special edition of Fallback for you right now. Two great guests, the legendary comic actor Jeff Garlin, known for his special brand of stand-up and roles ranging from films like Toy Story, Come On, The Goldberg starring role, Arrested Development, but he might be best known for his work on Curb.
I went all in Beverly Hills to pick up that cheese.
Oh, Jeff, he's complaining that the Wonderdonk is gone.
Good cheese.
Yeah.
You had it too? It's not a sandwich. What's with all the staring?
You cried. When E.T. phoned home, he left and you cried, and I saw it.
I did not. My name's Buttercup. You've met Baron von Schur. I am immensely successful. No, I am.
He is. The stand-up.
You left out the rest of that joke.
Well, you can finish it. You can finish it in a second, but not now.
Yes.
The new stand-up tour you saw there kicks off next month with over 40 years in the biz. And we have former L.A. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. This is his fallback debut, which means he's been around the beat long enough to loosen up a little bit with you, Jeff.
He's a great guy.
Mayor of L.A. for nearly a decade, Speaker of the California Assembly, a member of President Obama's Transition Economic Advisory Board when Obama trusted him dealing with many of those big issues after the crash. He is running, we should note, for governor of California.
Yes, Sam.
Welcome to both of you.
He is immensely successful. I'm just a guy who's funny. That was a joke. I
Finish
want to
the joke.
explain that.
Finish the joke.
The joke was I'm immensely successful, laughing at myself. And I say, when I walk down the street, people always ask me what's Larry David really like. So I said to Larry David, does anyone ask how I'm really like? No, never.
No, never. No one asked
that
about
was
you.
the joke.
So, see, we did you in the culture, we would say we did you dirty. Do you know what that means?
I know what all these things mean, and I've learned most of them from you. Go ahead.
I take responsibility for what happens here.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to own it.
Yeah.
We did you a little dirty. We showed a setup, and we didn't give you the punchline, and that's not really fair. No. But it is called a clip reel for a reason. It's little clips.
I don't like clips.
Okay.
You could have just announced me without a clip, and I got this stupid thing in my ear.
Well, you got to hear it. All right. So now,
I love it.
So now we go to the
neighbors.
Now we go to the mayor. You're running for governor. We could get to all that, but here we get to see a different side. You get a little more fun. What is on your fallback list?
The Secretary of Education is on my fallback list. You know, education is about keeping up with the new technologies, right? And she can't tell the difference between AI and A1.
A1 steak sauce.
Well, A1 steak sauce, that's right. But
which now is created by AI. They've changed the label. They've changed everything.
And when you think about that,
all right,
we need an education secretary that is focused on making us the envy of the world when it comes to our public education system. And she is good at, obviously, barbecuing a steak.
Right, well, what I want to say is, when we're selecting...
You're going to say it more fun.
No, but the woman who ran wrestling is now, she pretended she was in a wheelchair, did all these characters. I'm going to run the American education.
Yeah, that's
called the
world we live
of
in.
Insanity.
Yeah.
It is the world we currently live in.
Currently.
Temporary.
Well, you feel that it could change.
I always feel everything can change.
Yeah.
But now it changed with him coming in.
It is going to change.
It is going to change. I believe it. That stupid pendulum that people talk about.
Yeah.
Well, and it's going to change because The fact of the matter is we've made our own mistakes. I think a lot of people are talking about that across the country. We need a course correction, not just in this state, but across the country. We need to stop screaming at people. People who don't have a college education aren't stupid. The way they're treated by both parties, frankly. One, the demagogues, and the other one that looks down on them. And so it's going to change. The pendulum will swing back to a better place.
Hey, I don't have a college degree. I quit school to become a comedian at 20. I did.
How'd that go for you? I heard you're incredibly successful.
Got
a nice big house.
But I know nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Your fallback, I heard, has to do with toothpaste.
Oh, yeah. They asked me the questions, which one interests you? Kentucky Fried Chicken toothpaste?
I mean, it's really a reach, is it not?
Well, I understand it. Look, if people are buying it because it's funny, oh, I get that. And it is funny. But if you want a great chicken flavored brush, I thought we brush our teeth to avoid the fried chicken smell. That,
I'm actually for it.
You're for it.
If you had kids, they never wanted to brush their teeth. And if they like fried chicken and they want to brush their teeth with
I like Flintstones
chicken flavored toothpaste. That's great.
To me, we'll put the headline up again because to me, we deal with a lot of stories, right? We only cover some. When you tell me there's a silly product like chicken toothpaste, that doesn't get me. But if you look at the headline, let's run it up again.
What does it say?
It says it's selling out, right? It's selling out, Jeff. What does this tell you about humanity?
Tells me, no, I've got a humanity one for you, but I want to just say this quickly. No, it's funny. People are buying it.
You think everyone's buying it as a gag?
No, mostly are buying it because it's funny. There is a great percentage who love Kentucky Fried Chicken and think their breath is good with it. Here's a statement in our country. Los Angeles Dodgers. I go to the game Friday night. First person they introduce is a fireman who fought the Altadena fires for 38 straight hours.
Wow.
Okay? He got a decent amount of applause. Next up was someone from the military. Always got to applaud the military.
Sure.
It's a paid appearance by the military. They pay the teams to have them out there, but you still applaud.
Yeah.
Still applaud. It was a better applause than the firemen. And at that night, I didn't feel it was just. And then you take another jump. It was... what's his name? The first baseman on the Dodgers. My brain is dead. It was his bobblehead night. And when he came out, the thunder.
Well, Jeff.
Hold on. I'm not saying there shouldn't be thunder.
Well, it's home field. Isn't that what they call home field advantage?
Hold on. Home field advantage is a fireman who fought a fire for you for 38
I agree.
hours.
That's great. I am with you.
Hold on. That's great. That's amazing. And you better get your priorities in order, mister.
No, but they're at the baseball game that they came for that. I mean,
well, who comes to meet a fireman at a baseball game? But he was there, and he was introduced. Show him more respect.
I'll tell you one thing. You don't want to go to a baseball game and get introduced if you're a politician, even a successful.
You can't win.
Trouble with that?
No, it's a no.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I actually threw out the first pitch, and I did get a rounding applause, but I knew after the second time, I always told him, don't introduce.
Yeah, you don't want a lot of politics.
You don't want that.
No, you don't want it.
So many things with I told him, I go, whatever you choose to do, you can't win. I mean, you can make a difference, but there's always going to be
that's his
part
job.
of the population who want to punch you in the face.
Before we lose you, what else is on your fallback list?
Well, first of all, I want those toothpaste and stocking stuffers.
Yeah, it's fun.
Great. That's another reason. By the way,
I'd rather have chicken breath than bad breath.
But eggs. Did you want to go on the eggs?
Yeah, we should go on the eggs. Look,
we really should.
I'm with him. I had a conversation not so long ago with a big Democratic donor, and he couldn't understand why people would vote for someone who's talking about reducing the price of eggs and gasoline and groceries. And he said, democracy is at stake, and democracy is at stake. But when you're struggling every day to make eggs because you can't afford them, when you have children who need that protein, when you're trying to get in your car driving 2 hours from your job to your home, and the cost of gas is getting more and more expensive, that's what matters to you, because that's what's hitting you every single day.
Well, it shows the kind of economy we're in, whether you look at the market stuff that takes longer to hit, and we've been covering the tariffs, or this, where Trump ran on saying, I'm going to lower your prices, and he didn't, right? I mean, he hasn't.
They're increasing.
Yeah. I only got 30 seconds left. I got a question for you.
Yes.
And I want you to come.
I do not collect pottery. Everyone's asking.
I want you to come at this with an open mind.
Okay.
Okay? I know sometimes you get so excited. I know you
do get excited.
I want
the
you to
fireman thing really got
So
me
I
going.
want you to get into a serene place.
I'm a serene place. I'm a young lady.
Even a breath.
I do a breath. I
Let's do
do
it.
transit on
Okay, take a
meditation.
breath.
Okay.
Like
whatever
this.
that-
Okay.
I'll just do this. I'm hanging loose.
How's Larry David doing?
In all sincerity, I haven't talked to him in a little while. But when we talk, he's delightful.
It still bothered him a little bit.
No, it didn't.
It did a
by
little
the
bit.
way,
I
I
actually
love
saw him
Larry
a few
David.
weeks ago at a restaurant.
Yeah, but you didn't approach him, did you?
I did.
Oh, and what did he
I
say?
bet he loved
we
that.
know each other.
Oh, you do know each other. All right.
But I want to say, Larry David is a genius. I have a career because of Larry David.
love that.
And I admire him so much as a man, as a comedy genius. So anyone who asks about him to me, it's all good by me.
All kismet.
All kismet.
Respect.
Big bowl of kismet.
Love it.
Flowers. I give him his flowers. I know. We had a flower.
Yeah.
I'll tell you,
Flowers.
knowing him, he's a
Yeah,
guy
we
that-
talked. Dan, you know about flowers?
Well, I know about Larry.
Do you know the
He's a guy
expression
that
to give
cares.
someone their flowers?
No.
See, I didn't already.
We're
talk
running
it.
over on time. Tell them really quick. 20
Okay.
seconds.
It is when you want to give somebody credit, you're giving them their flowers. You want to say, I appreciate you, you're giving them flowers.
And the
I give
old-
you flowers.
And we'll end with
I
this.
give you flowers.
The old lyric is, if you admire somebody, you should go ahead and tell them. People never get the flowers when they can still smell them.
Exactly.
They come too late. Jeff Garlin,
I
Mayor
painted that on
Villarosa.
my garage,
Thanks,
by the way.
thanks to both of you. We'll be right back.